Okay, hello everybody. Starting in a few seconds, as soon as the clock turns over. Here we go. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. So we're continuing with the series on the Four Noble Truths, and today we're doing the third noble truth, which is the truth of the ending or cessation of dukkha. And following the pattern, the first noble truth was the statement of the problem. The second is the cause of the problem. The third is the resolution. And next week we'll do, and I may split it into more than one session, but next week we'll be doing the way to realize the third truth, which is the fourth truth. So the statement of the third noble truth is that there is an end to suffering. That's the simple statement of it. And in the Dhammacakka Sutta, which is where the Buddha first expounded the four truths, he said, where is the end of suffering is where this desire ceases here and now, the tanha, the second truth that we covered last time. So this is a very simple statement, and there's no further elaboration in this particular sutta. The third noble truth, the end of suffering, refers to the realization of nibbana, the unconditioned asankata. And if we go through the Pali Canon as a whole, there is not a lot directly said about nibbana. The reason for this is that there's not much that can be said about nibbana. In Majjhima Nikaya, there's a sutta where the Buddha is asked by a wanderer about the unconditioned. The way the question is phrased, he says, "What is the fate of the Tathagata after death?" The Tathagata being the enlightened person. And it's phrased in this way. He says, does the Tathagata exist after death? And the Buddha says that does not fit the case. And this, which is interesting that the reply was phrased in such a way, not saying, no, it's incorrect. He says that does not fit the case. And then this is repeated three times. Does the Tathagata then not exist after death? Does not fit the case. Does the Tathagata both exist and not exist? Does not fit the case. And does the Tathagata neither exist nor not exist? Does not fit the case. Now this is called the tetralemma, and it occurs with variations elsewhere in the canon. And it's a form, a structure taken from Indian formal logic, which is different than the logic we're more familiar with in the West, which derives from the Greeks. In Greek logic, or as it matured in Western logic, we have a rule of the excluded middle. So it's and one way this is expressed is either A or not A. So it's a binary logic and excludes the middle, whereas the Indian logic was a bit more subtle and was based on four poles rather than two. So in logical notation, it would be expressed as A. The four poles would be A, not A, both A and not A, neither A nor not A. So the Buddha was deliberately using that form in this sutta in order to say that nibbana is actually completely outside of logical discourse, because nibbana is the unconditioned, and our language and our speech and our thoughts are conditioned. So that which is conditioned cannot grasp or hold or describe the unconditioned. This is also shown in the Dhammacakka Sutta that we're primarily dealing with, in that, as I mentioned before, each of the four truths has an admonition of action or a task to be performed associated with it. And the first truth of suffering, we were told that this is the truth of suffering, you should understand it. The Pali verb is parijanati, which means like you should completely understand it or thoroughly understand it. So it is the first truth, which deals with conditioned reality. And in this broadest sense, it's all conditioned phenomena. So all of existence, all of ordinary existence can be understood. It can be grasped with the rational mind. But nibbana, the third truth, the Buddha said, he didn't say to understand it. He used the verb sachikaroti, which means to experience for oneself. So it's a different kind of knowing. It's direct knowing. A derivation of the verb would be to see with one's own eyes. Sachikaroti, sa-aki. To see, so one's own eyes is sa-aki. So it becomes sachi-karoti, and karoti to do or make. So nibbana can't be understood in the sense of parijanati, but it can be experienced in the sense of sachikaroti. It is within the potential capacity of human beings to understand nibbana. And the simple statement here in this sutta is, where is this third truth? Where is the cessation of nibbana? It's when the desire ceases, here and now. And this is a deceptively simple statement. What this implies is that nibbana is realized when we stop doing samsara. In each moment, consciousness is taking an object driven by desire, and a stream of objects put forward from largely from past karma coming before consciousness, and consciousness desires an object and takes the object. This is something we try and see directly and understand in Vipassana meditation, to see this process happening. And nibbana is what occurs when we stop doing that. There's a phrase in the Visuddhimagga that says, in reference to the mind that alights upon the unconditioned, it says, and then the meditator does that which he has not done since beginningless time, and lights upon non-occurrence. So when the process ceases, then nibbana is realized. When the samsaric process, which is explained in detail in the dependent origination, the 12 stages of the dependent origination details how samsara works. And the dependent origination is essentially a more detailed exposition of first and second truth. But the simple immediate process is the mind wants to take an object. It has a consciousness is driven by desire, by tanha, by this thirst for experience. It's driven to take an object, and there's a craving in the mind to find completion or satisfaction in the objects. And because of the first truth, because of dukkha, the objects are inherently imperfect, they're inherently unsatisfying. So the mind, having taken an object, immediately feels unfulfilled and experiences desire to take another object to try again. And this happens at many, many times in a single blink of an eye. This is what the mind is doing, reaching out to an object, taking an object, being unsatisfied and driven by desire to take another object. This is the primordial addiction. This is what the mind does by force of habit and has been doing through countless lifetimes. And if we stop doing that, then we realize nibbana, we experience for ourselves the unconditioned. So as I said, there's really not much we can say directly about nibbana. In the suttas, the discourses of the Buddha, when the topic of nibbana is treated, it's generally done in one of two ways. In some places, it's treated metaphorically or poetically, and terms are used like the far shore, the island, the safe, secure refuge. No, none of which are meant to be taken literally, but to be evocative to the mind. If there's an attempt to express things more technically or precisely, it's done in the use of negatives, telling us what nibbana is not. And the most well-known example of that is in the Udana, where there's a long list of polynegatives: the unborn, the uncreated, the unconditioned, ajata, akata, asankata, like that. And all this tells us is what nibbana is not. It's not born, it's not dying, it's not created, it's not conditioned, etc. So there really is very little to say directly about nibbana, and attempts to do so will end up being misleading. And it's really best for the practitioner not to attempt to construct a theory or an image of nibbana in the mind. That can only be an obstruction because it can never be correct. The goal should not be to understand it, but to realize it, to directly experience it. The realization of nibbana for the first time is the equivalent of a stream entry, sotapanna. This is what sotapanna or sotapatti is the first glimpse of the unconditioned. And that immediately purifies the view, and there's no turning back from that. It's a fundamental change in the depth of the being. And it's said that one of the characteristics of a stream winner is they are beyond doubt, because prior to the realization of nibbana, even in this very fleeting glimpse, prior to that, nibbana cannot be understood or imagined, and it can only be taken on faith that it's even possible. So it's inevitable that someone prior to that experience will have some doubt about the reality of nibbana. But after that experience, there's no doubt remaining. So I think that's about all I'm going to say about third truth. for now, and we'll go on. We've got lots of time to go on to the chat and see what questions might occur. Okay, there's one here already. Ajahn, in the Chula Kama Vibhanga Sutta, the Buddha said that envy leads to insignificant rebirth. Is it envy itself that leads to this, or anger, ill will that arises from that? I would say it's the envy itself. It seems a kind of an appropriate result of envy when then ends up being an obscure birth. Anger and ill will can lead to much worse outcomes. Could you say that jhana can be a sort of medicine to help treat this primordial addiction? That's an interesting way to phrase the question. The jhana as a medicine would be not a cure, but a relief of symptoms. You know? When you're the deeper your samadhi is, the less this jumping of the mind towards objects occurs. But jhana by itself doesn't lead to the deep understanding and the wisdom that allows one to completely break free of the cycle. So if we're going to use that analogy that you propose of medicine, I would say it's a type of medicine that alleviates symptoms without curing the disease. Okay, now we'll get a couple more questions. Why is parinamana better than continuing to live as an awakened one for eons, already free from suffering, a mind-made fabrication? I don't think it's a question of better or worse, but it's just the natural state of things, that the body is impermanent. So the being, the body will die, whether the being is awakened or not. And also, if the life could be extended, there's still physical pain associated with the body. Is 32 parts of the body meditation just a visualization? How do you do it? 32 parts of the body is primarily done as a visualization. The traditional way to do it is to go through the list of the 32 parts once in the forward direction and once in the reverse direction, patiloma, aniloma, briefly visualizing each part, and then to choose one part that's struck out for you, that stood out for you, that was easy to visualize, and to hold that as an object of contemplation for the remainder of the session. It's not thinking about the different parts or trying to understand them even in like a physiological or medical way, but just to visualize them as objects. Can one go backwards and eradicate delusion by eradicating craving? Yeah, that's actually that's not really even backwards. That's actually how it's primarily done. That craving is what causes us to fall into delusion. If we eliminate craving, then uh, there will there'll be a natural movement towards understanding, because the craving is what causes us confusion. We tend to see things through a lens of what's in it for me, instead of seeing things in their own nature as they actually are. I heard a story about a monk who died while doing walking meditation and got born in a Dewa realm, and remembered that he had been a monk and continued his practice. Is this legitimate? Yes, that's a story from the suttas. There's a monk who was very diligent, in fact, overzealous. He strained the body by missing food and continuing to spend long hours in meditation, not sleeping, and doing walking meditation for hours at a time. And he died and was reborn in the Dewa realm. And at first he was confused. He didn't know where he was. And when he found out he was a Dewa, he was horrified, because it uh, disrupted his practice. And he then went back to Earth and appeared before the Buddha and told the Buddha the story. Any advice on extending the length of meditation, samadhi? I could say two things about that. First of all, if you want to extend the length of your sessions, you do it gradually. Like start for whatever comfortable, and then keep adding a few minutes to it until you get to the desired length. And I guess that's the third thing I could add is there can come a point in the meditation when you really feel like stopping, and if you push through that, then you get a kind of a second wind. But the main second point I wanted to make was I think it's a dubious value to have to sit for really long periods of time, over an hour and a half, as some people try and do really long extended sits. It's good to have continuous meditation, but mostly it's better if you break it up with some walking meditation. Like you sit for an hour, get up and walk for half an hour, and then you can sit again if you want to extend your period of meditation, have a continuity of meditation. That's the best way to do it. What's the best thing one can do after experiencing Nibbana to ride the momentum of the experience? You just go with it. There's really not much you can do. Okay, this is this is a continuation of the one about delusion and craving, I guess. It's just, I guess it is back and forth thing, right? Yes. Yeah, I mean, they both sort of, those are the two real problems, is craving and ignorance. And they both kind of feed off each other. Craving is really the first one to be worked on, the first one to be broken. In every moment that we experience, every feeling, every encounter, is every moment we experience perfectly destined to come into fruition based on our previous actions? That we I lost the second part of that question. I'm not seeing it. Oh, here we are. That we experience here right now is absolutely perfect for us, karmically speaking, but is it interactive in a way that our current actions can afford to change its course? Is this thought true? This is very complicated. The relation, how things occur, the causation of things. First of all, we can never fully understand the causation of any experience completely, because it's so complex. Karma is one component only. There's also external causes, um, like the environment and actions of other people and so on. But our karma is one component of the complex of causation, and I don't think it's really. I think it's too simplistic to say that things are destined. Um, it's like in physics and mathematics, there's the idea of chaotic systems that have an appearance of randomness, but they're not actually random. It's just that the causation is so complex that it's unpredictable. We can't really predict what a chaotic system will be doing down the road. Um, but everything that occurs is a result of previous causes. So if you want to think of that as destined, then you could, but I don't think it's like a fixed destiny as is generally understood, or the simplistic idea of that. There was one teacher that the Buddha criticized, Makali Gosali, who had the theory that there's no free will and that we're just acting out a script and everything we do is predestined. And the Buddha criticized that view. I'll go on now to the next one. In a previous talk, you mentioned Stoicism. Would you consider it a skillful philosophy? Its ethics and details about sense desire and restraint are similar to Dhamma. Yes, I think Stoicism has a lot of, probably of all those Greek and Roman philosophies, is probably the closest to Buddhism in some ways, but it does lack a third truth. Basically, I think Stoicism's attitude is, yes, life is suffering, just accept it, get over it, rather than saying, as Buddhism does, life is suffering, find a way out of it. Can a Pacceka Buddha live as an Arahant for an entire kappa? No, I don't think so. Certainly, there's no case of that's mentioned or known. Experience right here and now is absolutely perfect for us, karmically speaking, but it is interactive in a way that our current actions can affect or change its course. Is that thought true? Yes, certainly we can. Our let's say our present experience is fixed in the sense that it's given from the past. It's not something we have a choice of what we experience at this moment. But then we do have the choice in each moment to make what to do with it, where to go with it. So we're experiencing karma and making karma alternately in each moment. Okay. This is from Dimitri in St. Petersburg. I'm working at night, Ajahn, so it's fine. Unfortunately, I'm often distracted. I need to watch the lecture again in recorded version. Okay. Yeah, I was trying to figure out what the time would be in St. Petersburg. I figured it's got to be wee hours of the morning. Ajahn, would an Arahant rush to the hospital if he was bitten by a deadly snake to save his life? Or because he has craving, he wouldn't care and accepts death? I think an Arahant would take sensible measures. If he knew he couldn't make it to the hospital in time, he would just sit down and mindfully die. But if he could make it to the hospital in time, he probably would do so. That would be my thinking on that. If a Brahma being lives in an environment like Diamond, do you think they live on white dwarf stars? That's an interesting speculation. And if diamond is made of carbon, then maybe Brahma beings are also carbon-based life forms. I don't know. Though that's all very speculative. Kind of like that idea about white dwarf stars. I hadn't thought of that. It's said in the old texts that I think it's in a commentary that describing the land of the Brahma gods, that it's a level plain uh, glistening with diamonds. Do you think it's a good idea to practice Mahabuddha's path from his book as a layperson? As far as you can. I don't think it's. I think it's difficult enough to follow Mahabuddha's footsteps as a monk. Um, a layperson has many more different kinds of duties and activities they have to perform. I heard metta is the easiest practice routine. Jhana. How can we practice this sitting and walking to reach jhana? How does this differ from how to do it to reach stream entry? I don't think you can reach stream entry by doing metta alone. I don't believe that's really possible. To use it to deepen samadhi and get into jhana, there would be a couple of different ways of doing it. One would be by general pervasion and gradually extend it out to the whole universe, and then just try and hold that feeling. Take the feeling of radiating metta as the object, and maintain that as the object of samadhi. The other way is to do it towards individual persons, and then you're in according to Visuddhimagga, then you're taking the person as the object. I really have some dispute with that. I don't think that really works. I think it's still the feeling that you are using as the object. The whole in any kind of samatha meditation, if you want to get into jhana, the idea is to have one relatively simple object at one sense base. So in this case, the sense base would be the mind base. You're being aware of a mental state, a feeling of metta. Next question. Can I have your view about some of the senior monks of Thai tradition point toward a universal pure consciousness awareness as synonymous to the unconditioned nibbana? Yeah, these are various attempts to express the inexpressible. To attempt to put the description of nibbana into words is always going to be problematic. And speaking of it as a universal pure consciousness is probably not bad as an approximation. There is a sutta where the Buddha talks about the enlightened mind, and he uses an analogy that comes close to this. He says it's like you're in a room and there's a sunbeam coming in through a window, and it strikes the far wall. Now, if the wall were to fall down, where would the sunbeam strike? So that's like consciousness that has gone beyond the act of taking objects. But this is also, I think, to can be pushed too far, because it almost really doesn't make sense to talk about consciousness without an object. If you were allowed to talk about it since you became a monk, how has your resting mental state changed over all these years? It's not too different from a layperson outside of a meditative state. I don't know what to say about that. I think anyone who takes up meditation will tell you that the ordinary state of mind becomes calmer. There's this probably a trivial sort of thing I can easily talk about is less anxiety, less fear. It's more peace. Is longing for other beings, good karma and good vipaka, something that needs to be abandoned on the path? Longing for other beings, good karma, good vipaka. No, that's practicing metta. There's nothing wrong with that. What do anagamis and sudawasa look like? Can they stay there eternally if they don't become arahant? Or do they have a lifespan and keep being reborn in the same realm eternally? No, they always attain arahantship, but they might have more than one lifetime. But there's 5 sudawasas, and if they expire, they can be reborn into the next one up until they finally attain nibbana. But there's no. That's why they're called anagami, non-returner, because there's no coming back from that. They become arahants and cease to be reborn. And what they look like, there's no, as far as I know, there's no precise description of that. But the implication seems to be that they look like devas, or perfect human beings. Do you have any experience or knowledge of standing meditation? I've seen Taoists and Jains practice this. How about Buddhism? Yeah, standing meditation is one of the 4 postures, and it is possible to do. Generally, in our tradition, is not done a lot. We do sitting and walking, but standing is sometimes done as an alternate to sitting. If you're sleepy, it can be a good alternate to sitting posture, just to stand up, as you're not so likely to fall asleep. Let's see. Can people misinterpret experience in meditation with nibbana? Yes, that happens all the time. So there are all kinds of powerful experiences one can have in meditation, and it's very common for people to think they have attained to nibbana when they haven't. So it's always good to consult with like a senior monk, or someone who who is knowledgeable and that you trust, to talk about it and see if you can figure out whether it actually was nibbana or it was something else. Oh, let's see. I meant, this is a correction of a previous question. I meant Pacceka Brahma, not Pacceka Buddha. I said Brahma could live for a whole kappa. Yes, yeah. In the case of a Pacceka Brahma, they can live for a whole kappa. That's correct. Can the stream enter realize nibbana through jhana? I'm not sure what to say about that. It's not possible while in jhana to have a realization, but it is possible for a stream enter to repeat the experience, and if we count that as a jhana or not, I don't know. I think that's a matter of definition. How can I let go of the past when memories appear and create great energy in the body, like the anxiety when the body becomes very stiff and frozen? That's something you have to work with. That's the sort of thing that I think almost everybody will have some problem with that when they try and become quiet and watch the mind as old memories come up and bring with them the baggage of the old emotions. Um, Try and look at the memory objectively and uh, with the contemplation or the realization that this is no longer real. This happened once, but it's not now. It's just a an image at this point. It's just a mental formation. It's not real, and the being that experienced it is no longer um, really in existence. This is a new moment, a new consciousness. It's not me, not mine. Next one. If an enlightened being can remember all past lives, like the Buddha, does that mean that memories are eternal? I think that, like in the case of a Buddha, I would say that the memories are outside of time. He's accessing some kind of different stream or um, different angle or direction of looking at time than the ordinary one. What is the story behind the Vinaya banning of a monk or nun bobbing their head back and forth in public? Um, I don't know if there actually is a story for that. Well, those minor rules, the Sakya rules, are rules of etiquette, and there's not necessarily a story behind each one. Some of them there is just a brief story, which usually just amounts to some monk was doing that. And it got back to the Buddha, and the Buddha said, don't do that anymore. That looks stupid. Regarding the metaphor consciousness or of sunlight that shines without the wall, it looks to me like the Buddha refers to supermain mundane consciousness with the voidness nibbana as object. Yeah, that would be a reasonable interpretation. Okay, I'm going to take a couple more and then we'll quit. A family member meditated with mantras all day, their job for years, and told me this. They can close their eyes and immediately experience meditative bliss. Can you explain what this is? Yeah, that would be a kind of a jhana, which a mantra can lead to a kind of a jhana. I heard of people who claim to have attained claim to have attained nirodha sampati, and some claim to lose consciousness completely, while others claim to experience nibbana while conscious. Why this difference? I would be a little dubious about those claims because nirodha sampati is a very advanced development, and it's really only possible for an anandagami or arahant. Okay, let's see. I'm having trouble with this interface here. I see what's going on. Okay. I'm hitting the wrong scroll bar. Okay, I think that's all we'll take for today. It's questions